I swear by Almighty God that the evidence I shall give before the committee shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help me God.
Dennis McShane said that the one issue he didn't want to raise was the prevalence and concentration of this offending behaviour within the Pakistani community in Rotherham. Why was that?
I don't know why Mr McShane said what he said, but I think there was absolute fear culture in the community, and I do often think that people were frightened of raising the issue. I don't think that's anything to do with the ethnic issue. I think it's a genuine fear.
Who did you fear?
I didn't fear anyone, really, in that sense. I raised these issues. We brought reports to the Early Child Protection Committee, to the Safeguarding Children Board.
What I really can't understand is how you were so ineffective in raising these issues. People, when they came to Rotherham Council, they weren't believed. It was thought the problem was exaggerated. People didn't want to deal with what was going on largely in the Pakistani community. Social workers wouldn't take these girls onto their casework. And you, surely more than anyone else, was the point person who should have dealt with that and failed to do so.
It takes a long time to change the culture of an organisation, sir. I can say that.
Okay. Ms Thacker, are you still monitoring the political leanings of foster parents in Rotherham?
I just say that regardless of political persuasion, people are entitled to become foster parents if they're fit and purpose.
The thing I don't understand about all this is that you said you knew there was a problem with child sexual exploitation and grooming, and that it all improved in 2006-2007 when a new police commander was appointed. But it's been during this period that hundreds more girls have been abused. I mean, how could that have happened if it was being taken as seriously by you and the police as you've told us this afternoon?
I can honestly say the working relationship with the police significantly improved when Matt Jukes arrived. It had been difficult before then. You will know that Risky Business passed evidence after evidence on to the police at the time, and it felt like nothing was being taken seriously. I'm afraid we can't stop child sexual exploitation, much as I would like to do. If I could stop it, I would, but there are bad people out there intent on harming children.
When you say Risky Business passed evidence to the police before 2006-07 and it wasn't taken seriously, they also passed lots of evidence to you and the police since then, and I have to say, it looks to me as if it wasn't taken seriously then either. I've got a list here of probably a dozen occasions on which reports and details came to you and Mr. Wright and the police as well, and clearly not enough was done to tackle most of these perpetrators have still not been arrested, let alone prosecuted and convicted. The other thing that I've been told is that at least 2 members of staff reporting to you told people trying to bring all of this to light to shut up, to stop talking about this, to stop trying to raise this. Has that ever been put to you? Has that ever been suggested to you? Do you know about that? I
would be absolutely appalled. I would be absolutely appalled if any person reporting to me said that to any member of my staff, because frankly, that is so important that we protect children. And if somebody who had said to stop talking about it, or whatever they'd said, I would be very, very annoyed with that.
I just wanted to pick you up on a point that you made at the last session when you gave evidence to us. You said to the chairman at the very beginning of your evidence that you viewed prosecutions as the icing on the cake. And at that point in 2013, there had only been 5 prosecutions of child sexual exploitation related cases in Rotherham. Now there have obviously been 104 prosecutions. Have you changed your mind?
I've always viewed that prosecution is the most vital deterrent. I think my choice of language was unhelpful.
You said that the council welcomed Andrew Norfolk's stories, but isn't it true that Rotherham Council actually asked South Yorkshire Police to conduct a criminal investigation against the leak which had initially led to the Times reporting? And isn't it also true that they hired a legal team to secure a High Court injunction barring publication of one of his articles as recently as 2012?
I don't know about a legal team, an injunction. I can't honestly recollect that.
You're telling this committee that you have not heard of Rotherham Council seeking legal advice
This was
to stop publication?
This was a case which was dropped when Michael Gove said that this information should be in the public domain.
This was a serious case review. Sorry, it was not an article published by Andrew Norfolk. This was a serious case review, which is a very different matter.
Well,
and
yes,
indeed,
but
Professor Jay does cover this in her report.
Just one second. Nicola Blackwood, just finish.
And as I understand it, part of the High Court injunction was to prevent Andrew Norfolk from reporting the case.
It was not reporting the case, no, not at all. In my estimation, it was about actually covering, it was him reporting, it was him producing the serious case review in full. That was the issue, and Professor Jay indeed touches on that in her report.
And was the finding after all of that had fallen away, that what was attempted to be removed in the redactions was not just the details that would have protected the victim, but also aspects of failures of the council?
No, none whatsoever. And Professor Jay actually does cover that in her report. She does not say we attempted to cover up. She does say some of the redactions she queries, but doesn't think in any way it covered up our actions.
Can we just be clear, because both you and Mr. Kimber are on oath? You were saying that you are unaware that the council sought to prevent Andrew Norfolk and the Times reporting details of the case of Laura Wright, a 17-year-old girl who was groomed and subsequently murdered. Are you telling this committee that you are unaware that the council was seeking an injunction?
Chair, I can say the injunction was against the full publication of the Child S Serious Case Review of Laura Wilson.
Who was dead at the time?
Absolutely.
Right. So how would that information come into the public domain when the victim was already dead? What was the problem?
But the victim has family.
I also would
Chair.
like to take you back to the comment that you made that you didn't realise the scale of the problem, and some of the evidence which we received in private session from Jane Senior and Dr. Hill and a Home Office researcher. Obviously, you were the chair of Risky Business Steering Group. Was it 2003 to 2004?
No, it would be later than that. I think it would be 2005. I remember stepping down when I got the position as the Senior Director of Children's Services in 2006, because it would have been a conflict of interest.
Okay, so you would then have been involved in some of the reports that Dr. Andrew Hill would have shared, which included analysis of the links between drugs running, guns running, and serious abuses of an exploitation that was sort of widespread across Rotherham in 2006. She was clear that she shared that with the steering group of Risky Business in 2006.
I can recollect Dr. Hill sharing that information. I can recollect that it was in the police hands. I can't recollect what happened with it from there. I remember that it was frustrating because the police, as a group, didn't seem to be taking it seriously, and I recollect Dr. Hill's frustrations with that.
How can you reconcile your evidence to the committee that you didn't realise the scale of the problem with the main finding of the 2006 report, which described the continuing abuse having gone on for a number of years with an established sexual exploitation scene which is very organised and involved systematic physical and sexual violence against young women, that involved young women being trafficked to other towns and cities, predominantly in the north, which involved a level of intimidation, physical beatings and rape amongst exploited girls, considered by multi-agency staff to be very severe and their situation to be very serious?
I think when we came last year, I recollect we discussed then the evidence was about 600 historic cases. What Professor Jay has uncovered is 1,400.
Oh, I see. So it's the difference between 600 girls being abused and 1,400 girls?
None whatsoever. So I remind last year when I gave evidence, it was about the fact that we talked about 600 then. What Professor Jay, in all her work, has come up with 1,400 victims, which is absolutely shocking. It's one person being abused through any form of abuse, particularly sexual exploitation, is one victim too many. And it deeply, deeply saddens me when children have to go
Your
through
salary
this.
is 130,000. Is that right, Ms Thacker?
With pension contributions, yes, I get 115,000 a year.
Thank you. Michael Ellis is the final question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Kimber, is it a rotten borough council that you've been presiding over? That one, blames victims, two, blocks complaints of horrific child sexual abuse and exploitation over a prolonged period of time, and three, seeks an injunction against the Times newspaper, who quite frankly with Andrew Norfolk have done more to expose this incident than are a lot of very highly paid public servants who are a disgrace to the public service. Now,
Order.
how much...
Have no noise from the gallery.
How much, Mr. Kimber, did you waste of taxpayers' money on the legal action against the Times newspaper, seeking to block them from doing the public service that they did? How much? How much do those lawyers cost?
To try to deal with your questions, the latest one first, I don't know, sir, but I can let you have the answer in
Roughly.
writing.
Over 100,000? Over 200,000?
It would be nowhere near that.
Let us have a note.
Perhaps you'll let us have a note.
I will, sir. In the context of me working with a Rotten Borough, I do not recognise...
Rotten Borough Council.
Rotten Borough Council, I do not recognise what you say in the context that I personally would never allow a position where victims were blamed. It's absolutely not acceptable that infant...
That's what Professor Jay's report says.
Professor Jay's report doesn't say it's from 2010 onwards, and I've been the chief executive from the very end of 2009, and so I'm giving you my position of the council that I recognise. I absolutely would not allow that to happen.
Right. Now let me ask you this then, because when the Times broke the story, your response as a local authority was to ask the police to investigate who leaked it to them. Isn't that right? Isn't that right, Mrs. Thacker?
We've already covered that, sir, in previous questions.
Just answer the question. I don't care whether you've covered it or not. Was that your response to actually look for the leaker to the story rather than get to the bottom of the gravamen of the story itself?
It was important that we protected innocent people's data being released to goodness knows who.
The data was more important than the child abuse victims.
No, it was important that we protected innocent people.
It's committee that the evidence we received from Joyce Thacker today has been unimpressive, and we believe that she should be asked to step down to reflect on her position, and if she doesn't do so, she should resign. Of course, at the end of the day, Ms. Thacker, it's a matter of you accept your evidence that you raised this and nobody was listening to you, though we will hear from Mr. Wright shortly. We believe you, having received the evidence today from Risky Business, where they tell us that 100 names were in this file that was given to you in 2006, this went up to 600 names when you gave evidence to us, and it's now reached 1,400 names, that you should have been aware of this as you were intimately involved in these matters, and that you should resign as a matter of conscience and in order to try and cleanse the council of the leadership that it's had so far. That is the unanimous and collective view of this select committee.
And I've made my position quite clear, Chair.
Well, we know that. I'm just telling you, you made your position clear at the beginning, and I think that the attitude you've displayed today and in the unimpressive nature of your evidence only adds to that. You might like to bear that in mind, Mr. Kimber, since you've still got 3 months before you go. I'm sure you wouldn't like your legacy to Rotherham to be, you have gone, and the rest of those responsible are still there. I'm sure since everyone has so much respect for you in the council, you will use your persuasive power to try and cleanse the council of the past, to give the people of Rotherham, and the young people of Rotherham in particular, a future. Thank you for coming in today.
Thank you, Senator.